new, but I wanted to go through a couple of things. I'm so excited. I haven't done Feature Run. I can't remember the last time. So I'm not sure what kind of program we're going to get, because I was just so excited to do this. So I'm kind of, it's a little hard to have the things. If you think you're going to be here to learn everything about Louis Janoschek, however you want to say his name, you might want to leave now. I actually have a kind of a conglomerate of things, but before I do that, just a couple of announcements, reminder, Feed Your Mind free will donation. So we have a little bit of a different setup. So the donation box is still by the door. It'll be on your way out, so your donations are very much appreciated. I also want to give a call out. We can thank Doug Fickbaum and Frank Bill Chase and Roger Dietrich. They're all in the back there for this new layout of ours. So we should give them a round of applause. It's a work in progress. And Doug went through and mounted some TVs, and so we're definitely looking for a donation of more of the 65-inch TVs. Right? That one there is just a little bit smaller, but our plan is to have 3 of these so that no matter where you're sitting in the room, you have a great view, which those of you that have been coming to Feed Your Mind for a while know that's not always something we achieve with these columns in the middle of the room. Beautiful as they are not see-through, so it's nice to have this new setup, and the switching of the room was just so that the glare was not on your screen. So definitely
Turn your phones off?
turn your phones off. Yeah, turn your phones down, turn yours off, and mine is off. Yeah, for everyone, thank you very much. And then there also is over the calendar event cards updated, and membership cards. If you're not already a member, very much appreciated that you become a member and help us continue our mission here. T&B tickets and raffle tickets downstairs on your way out. Make sure you get yourself all set up for either or both of those things. All right. My teacher's watch says it's time. Time to go. So, yeah, so welcome again. I started the museum 20 years ago. 2006, I was an intern. 2007, I became the executive director. From the very beginning, my very first office was wall-to-wall books. And well, these 2 walls were solid books, floor to ceiling, and the other wall in my office was photographs and boxes and files and files and files, photographs. So when I didn't want to work, guess what I was doing? Love books and I love photographs. Pictures worth 1,000 words, right? Any of us could take this photograph and probably pretty easily come up with 1,000 words. Whether you know what that picture is of or not, doesn't matter. That was the phrase was first coined by Dr. Brisbane. He was a newspaper editor. I like to figure out when he said that. But he said that because he said, you should spend your money in photographic advertising. So it's after the turn of the century, and he was trying to get people to do photographs in the newspaper to advertise. So he said a picture's worth 1,000 words. My fascination was from the very beginning. I wouldn't say that I have an eidetic memory. I don't. But the photographs, as I would sit through them in those moments when I really didn't want to do whatever thing I had to do, I could piece together over time. And every time somebody brings us now a new photograph, we're just enthralled with it because it adds another piece to the puzzle. Especially, of course, if we know taken at, or if it was a photograph we had not yet seen, it adds to the timeline. It is no different than if you have children and you're photographing their advances through time and they're growing up, right? This is what we do here, is we use photographs to show the development. If I had the time, I thought it would have been really fun to do a little flip book series of like a certain section of town but I am not a photographer. I've seen some of these processes done in person. We had a photographer come through at Metal Pioneer Power Show several years ago, and he used some of these methods in his photographing. We didn't get to see the whole process, but just the setting up, the taking the photograph, it was really cool. So I know enough about what we're talking about today, Be Dangerous, not enough to be the ultimate say-all. So that's what the front row here is for. They're gonna fill it in for you. All right, photographs and research. As I already said, we talked about piecing together different components of photographs, and we use them in our collection. And it's not just trying to figure out when this picture was taken, but it also helps us in the reverse. So once we can identify perhaps an era, we can determine what businesses are in this picture to also figure out a history of a business or an organization or something like that. So it's not just the dating. That's this much of research for photographs. It helps us in so many other ways. The highline poles, utility poles, tells us about utility setups in early Yankton, right? How soon did that happen? Once we can figure out the date of the photograph, it tells us all of these other things. When we got this photograph, or when I came across this one has always been in the collection. We were trying to date it. I didn't have a specific date on this one. So a couple things that we did was 3rd Street's not paved. Does anybody know when 3rd Street was paved?
1915.
1915. So my photograph at least now is earlier than 1915. Woo-hoo. You know, just about a century, right? Union Block building. If I had to zoom in closer, this building here, there are 2 different, well, there's actually 3 if you look at overall. But the corner of 3rd and Walnut there is different. It's on different faces because there was a fire at Union Block. And so, fire at Union Block, does anybody know when that was? So 1901, 1902. Couldn't find one or the other. Somebody said one way and somebody said the other. So yeah, now I know my photograph is not older than 1901. Of course, we try to look at cars and buy goods because it really helps out a lot. For those of you that remember pre-internet days, you know, when something becomes newly released, say on the East Coast, it's not like it's showing up here the next day. It can take a while for things to spread and to show up in our photographs. So we kind of take that a little subjective. But when you have a car that's past the time when license plates had the year on it, that's a gold mine. Love that. I wish that was that way from the very beginning of the license plates, because that would help us out tremendously. And then the brick buildings versus wooden structures. Then we say, well, that's probably after the flood of 1881 when there was a real surge of brick building construction. So we put this photograph as circa 1890. So not bad. We're talking 150 years ago. I can live with a decade. That's okay. We get pretty close. Sometimes we can zoom in. If the original is clear enough, we can zoom in and we can find specific businesses. And we had a volunteer several years ago when we were at the old place. And all he did was go through and he cataloged every city directory until 1954. So the earliest one we had, I think, was 1878 or something like that, which they didn't really have a specific address, but we knew the business existed. At that time, they didn't have an address. They just said, oh, you'll find us between, you know, Douglas and Wilmot or something like that. You're like, oh, okay, well, that could be anywhere, but that's fine. So that has really helped. And we'll punch that in and figure out how long did that business exist, and sometimes we can get down to a specific year. So it's a lot of fun. Rabbit holes is our life. So yeah, really if you're interested in that, there's a really great reference book called They Capture the Moment by Robert Colby and Brian Mead. They did this, 10, 20 years ago maybe, and he has a whole collection of photographs and they basically put together. So the book is not pictures, but it's on the back of it is all the Dakota territorial photographers that existed, when they existed, and where they are known to have existed. And they use that by using those cabinet cards with addresses and really doing that. I thought that was, this is a long work to do this, but we're really fortunate we have these kinds of references to help us out. John Mix Stanley, supposedly is the very first to be in what would become Dakota Territory as a photographer, and that would have been in 1853. Morrow arrives in town in 1867, and he sets up shop on the corner of 3rd and Walnut. So this is the family building or river fronting on the center. If I reference something and I referenced it from like 100 years ago, it's because I don't pay attention to who's there now, but I know who was there 100 years ago. But yeah, so that house is on that corner. And that's where his photography studio was. And Morrow traveled, and when he traveled, his wife, Isa Morrow, she took care of everything. She was a photographer of Yankton. So I think if ever, we could maybe do a program just on Morrow, you can't do a program just on Morrow, you've got to make sure that you're involving his wife, Isa Ketchum Morrow. She did a lot. Got none of the recognition, but she got a lot. They left when he got sick. Morrow got sick, went to Florida, and then to Texas, and that's where he died. I think that's probably because Louis Janacek really becomes Yankton's photographer. He's here the longest. He's setting up shop. He's here permanently. He's here until he dies in 1934. He came to Yankton, he was 30 years old. When he immigrated with his family in 1858, and then they came out, and his first shop he set up was actually in Niagara, Nebraska. When they were traveling to Niagara, there was a total eclipse of the sun that happened, and that's one of my favorite stories, because I'm sorry, you can't tell me that everybody knew what was going on. I mean, scientifically, we're so aware now, right? But could you imagine leaving everything behind? You're nervous anyway, you're leaving your country, everything you know. You're going to a new place, and then when you get to that new place, the sun is blocked out, and there is no light. You have to kind of wonder what's really, especially when you're heavily religious-based, you're leaving religious persecution, right? So you just got to be thinking the complete almighty end of the world, something or another. But no doubt they had some notion of what's going on, but still it's sort of like this doomsday scenario, I think, when they arrive. He goes off, Lou goes to college in Chicago, Fine Arts, and that is where he learns to paint, and he also learns photography. I wish I could figure out which versions of photography he was really diving into, because when he's there, the photographic methods are endless, absolutely endless. Should show you real quick. There he is at his building down at 306 3rd Street, with the general ship in the stained glass. And then him as a painter and artist, because at the top of that building, he put in a skylight so that he could have better viewing indoors. Also, photography is so new. It's new, but it's not new. We're talking about 1880. It's just very experimental, and it's very cheap. It's readily available. He's still living in a world where he grew up that you really had your portrait painted. And while into the 1880s, if you had money, you're still going to get your portrait painted because you're not going to be like the poor folk and go spend 2 cents to have a picture taken. You're going to spend the money to pay someone to sit there and paint your portrait. What's interesting though too is that Januszek, he kind of does both. So one of the, it's not in this one here, but in one of his photographs, he took a picture of the second governor of Dakota Territory, Governor Edmonds. He took a picture of him and then used the picture to paint his portrait. So he used both mediums, and I thought that was kind of cool. He did paint Dr. Leonard C. Mead. I don't know if he did that from a picture or not. That's the only reason why I know that with Edmonds is I actually have a picture of him sitting next to his painting. And then we have the picture that he took as well. The 2 paintings he did of Dr. Mead are missing. So he's hanging in someone's closet, and they probably don't know who he is. Like I would pick him out in a lineup and in a heartbeat, right? But somebody's got it somewhere. One portrait of Januszek was given to the State Historical Society in honor of Dr. Mead after his passing. That one we understood stated here. We believe the other one was here on this campus, perhaps maybe even in this building. But he's MIA in both counts. So there's a scavenger hunt for everyone. You know, when I said, oh, I have some pieces of art, but I don't know who these guys are. You should say, oh, look at this. But he's also captured, thank goodness, for Januszek, because he captured so many great moments for Yankton history. Like, how exciting would it be now to be like, oh, presidents visited, but I have no pictures of it. I have actually a few pictures of Third and Walnut, and this is Teddy Roosevelt. Either campaigning on the campaign trail or he returned as president. There's this whole other program I can cover on that. He also photographs our soldiers before they head out for the Spanish-American War, which our guys actually didn't fight in Spanish-American. They fought in the Philippine-American War that came right after. So they didn't make any time for the Spanish part, but they did for the Philippines. That took me a long time to figure out also where that picture was taken. Does anybody know?
In front of the Guard Hall.
In front of the Guard Hall? No. So we researched that extensively, but it doesn't match up. Yeah. So they're on Cedar Street. This is a little blacksmith shop, something or another that we figured out. So that was one that was really hard for us to figure out where that lines up. But it's down there. It's very early. Everything there is gone, of course. Let's see here. But we'll get to more of those. You'll win some, I promise. I love this picture. This is the advertising that Januszek put in the newspaper for the state fair, because everybody's coming to Yankton for the big state fair, because Yankton used to host the state fair. And he put this advertising in the paper, and I know it's hard to read because the original print was really hard to read, but it says, "She broke the glass, but we're still making the finest photos in the Northwest." Special prizes during the state fair, or during the fair. So it's Januszek on the side there. I thought that was really cute. Poor lady. So when I was talking about photographic methods, this is the summary version of photographic methods that would have been exposed to Louis Januszek. Obviously, of course, not the ones before. But this is Harvard's list of the timeline of photography. So I'm not going to go through all of it because it's complicated. But I wanted to do the ones that we see here in the Midwest the most. First attempts at photography. There are people that are trying to make photographic images during 1717 to 1826. They're just not permanent. So they're succeeding in taking photographs. They're not succeeding in them becoming permanent photographs. So there's a difference. So let's start a varied and complex timeline with a varied and complex explanation, right? Then you get Louis daguerreotypes, and I have daguerreotypes, ambrotypes, and tintypes with me today, so I'll share those with you. The part that is very frustrating about that period of time is there's just no great way to identify on the photograph who's in the photograph. And it's awful because it's all these people. These might be some of our earliest residents, and I have no way of knowing that. AI technology. I mean, I'm a fan and I'm not a fan, but they do for a long time. I mean, police departments use face recognition, and I know face recognition is always coming up in the information, but they do have face recognition software that as we would put our photographs into that, as we identify people, it would actually tell us who else might be in our photographs that aren't identified. So we can use technology now to identify photographs. That's one of my pipe dreams, would love to do, because I think we would be able to really find a lot of people to be identified. It's heartbreaking when you can't identify a place or people in a photograph. It is heartbreaking for us because they're lost to history when you don't know. And they're just a photograph that I don't know what to do with. So, if you don't tell Megan, I'm going to pass these around. They're in boxes, and I'll talk about them as it passes around. Don't tell her. These are SF-free boxes. The images, they'll flop around in there. Just leave them lay on the back. But they do say at the top what kind they are. And as I pass them around, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And I'll just kind of spread them around here a little bit. I would have to say daguerreotypes, ambrotypes, tintypes are my favorite. These two are ambrotypes. Did you want? Okay. The differences in these kinds. So the daguerreotype has a mirrored image to it. It's because they use, they dubbed them the mirrors with an image. Nowadays we call it creepy ghosts in your mirror, right? You see that in scary movies all the time. These are creepy to look at, honestly, the mirrored image. You'll almost never see them on display, and if you do, they're probably in a really dark room. It's all about light exposure, right? And chemicals and duration of exposure and all of that. So some of these images are fading, even though they live in this dark box and another box and another box in cold temperatures. They're still in worse shape than when I started 20 years ago. So the other things I pass around, so the ambrotype, I didn't make note on that, but it says all about how they are being placed on to their backing. So if I start with the daguerreotype is a silver, highly polished glass. You're going to put the image on that glass, and then you're going to put something dark behind it, so you can see the image, right? You're not really creating a negative. So a lot of times you'll see that they come in different things like this. Again, it's kind of a one-shot deal, right? If you overexpose or you don't do something right in the process, we end up with situations like this. This one here at first we thought was just a looking glass, but they're in there. It's a photograph that is almost gone. Putting on back, they're heavy. You can tell the daguerreotype is heavy. Ambrotypes are different. Okay, so ambrotypes kind of can be misunderstood as daguerreotypes sometimes. I often have to take a close look because ambrotypes seem to appear somewhere between tintypes and daguerreotypes. But they are the most crisp photos that you could find from the 1850s and 60s. They're amazing. I can understand why they really liked that particular method. So that's kind of somewhere in the middle. And then the tintypes, I don't know. Tintypes are the images put directly onto the tin. Okay, so you're putting it on a dark image. There's a clear lacquer of sorts that goes over the top, protects the image, it's on there. So that's like a very dull look to them because they're on. Ambrotypes are copper-based, I believe, so make sure I don't get them mixed up. But, so they're cool. There's a reason you don't see them very often. Images are gone, or they've been thrown, or they're just in deep dark hiding because nobody wants them to be overexposed. Louis Janoschek, he starts, and that's why I'm like, he could have learned all of these things. I don't know. When he's at fine art school, you're learning photography at this time. A lot of these things overlap considerably. The collodion type was easy for cross-country. So you see that more, that type and the gelatin wet plate. This is where Janoschek is. When he comes back to Yankton, this is where the process starts for him and his method. And that's where we get into these really great ornate cabinet cards. I believe the smaller ones are the CDs. And this one here is his later work. This is about 1900. And so based on, this is great too, when we're talking about history, research, photographs. What's great is that in some instances, Janoschek put his address on. Some instances he didn't. But that's okay, because once we sort of figure out who he was working with, like this one here is Janoschek and Braun. That can narrow down a certain time frame for that, which I believe is mentioned in this book from Robert Colby too. This box here I brought up from archives. This box is Janoschek photographs. I don't know who the people are, but they are sorted by his timeline. So sometimes it was L. Janoschek, sometimes it was just Janoschek, sometimes it was Janoschek Braun, all of that. So it's all sorted out by his era. So we can get pretty close to the timeline, but I don't know who they are. So that's sad. And with all of the scrapbooks of people that we have, that we do know who they belong to, some of the early albums we have is, I'm trying to think here, it was the Edmonds family, and they were friends with the McVeighs, and and the McVeighs were friends with, and so it keeps going, and they're all, the Pound family is in there, Edmonds family, the McVeigh family, some random other people are in there, and I don't have their first name, but I have a last name, or I have a first name, not a last name. I mean, how great would that be to put that into the software and figure out who they are? Okay. More of my mysteries. This one here, these are two photographs, took me a long time to figure out where they were. So anybody want to take a shot at it? This one here? Anybody know what that would have It took me a while because I knew that they were county commissioners, but they weren't county buildings in town. I couldn't figure it out. Only later on to find out that the Grove School building was turned into the county maintenance building at one time. And so it's still out there. So if you go out on Burdick Avenue past the current Parks and Recs building, and you go there, curve, you gotta go out of town, and then you curve, and you come back into town, there's a house in that corner. It's the old Grove School. That was the maintenance building for a while. And the county commissioners took a picture there. If anybody lives there, I apologize, I creeped that house a few times. I'm trying to figure out a couple things. Yeah. I really should park my car, because I do go in some random places and ask people random things, and I knock on their doors, because we're trying to figure it out. But yeah, so that was kind of fun. So I'm going to show you a series of buildings that are still standing. Some of you are going to take this right away, and some of you might think about it a little bit. But anybody know what corner this is in town? Third and Cedar. Yep. Third and Cedar. This is what Third and Cedar looks like now. Well, not really. I mean, this is Google Earth. Go back. Merchants Hotel, Freedom Gas Station, or what used to be the Freedom Gas Station. Thank you. Yay, nobody dropped them. I gotta be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, this might have been what Democrat's still in there. I think that may be about right. That's different now. I think that's still there. So that's kind of fun. This was a great photograph. Actually, I think I got this from Larry Ness, so thanks Larry for the photograph. That was one of those images I hadn't seen before. And you can't just say it's 3rd Street. That's not right. 3rd Street between what streets? This one took us a while. Some of these buildings are covered up, so it's kind of, it's all there. So explaining this one? Wait, that was a moment. What a difference, huh? What a difference. It could have been any set of buildings. They eventually figured out, of course, American State Bank was one of those buildings, so we knew the address of American State Bank. But then we were able to get close enough to realize that the building on the corner of what is now Riverfront is the corner there. If you zoom in, you can see all the architectural details. It's just all painted now. And then the pet store is here. I believe this building is part of the corner that was Kopetsky's. And then this would be what was Lewis and Clark Drug at one time, and now it's something home. Thank you. I knew it wasn't Walgreens. I'll get that wrong. So there you go. Obviously, of course, everything had been changed in this area. Anybody can correct me at any point. This is learning curve. This one is Harvard. This took us a while. And we had to probably go through research to probably figure it out. We looked it up at business, how to figure out another way. Broadway, Avenue, on the west side, 3rd and 4th Street. Who to guess, right? I don't know, and maybe with historic Yankton people in the room, like, was it all just covered up, or what? I'm not entirely sure how the buildings connect, but they obviously have modern facades on the front of them. So that took a little bit to figure it out. We really went by the businesses, and so thank goodness Rich Teskey in 2008, 9, 10, no, it would have been about 2010 to 2012 or 13. He has since passed on, but that's what he did all day, is he just went through all the directories. We don't have residents in that directory, we just have businesses, but still, like, that's amazing. We still, if somebody does come to us and they give us their residence, we can use the bulk directories. You can reverse figure that out. So we can still be helpful with residents. We just don't have it at a click of a button. Unless somebody wants to put all the bulk directories in for us, then we can. It's a little harder to see, but it should be pretty obvious. I don't know. You spend time downtown, you can figure that one out. P&D, Turner Hall, P&D, next to the old post office, across from the theater. You seeing it? They have to have advertising on the side of the building there. We could find an address for this Fred Berkey, is that how you say his name? Lumberyard. This was a great winter scene, so of course that's what it looks like now. I think that under this building is this, perhaps. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that something that would be super amazing sometime is to create, perhaps someone in this room already has, by location, sort of a series of the transition of each individual place, because I feel like that's such a big part of the story too. You can tell there are going to be certain streets that are not photographed very often, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's always the main streets and Broadway and Douglas, 3rd Street, and then when you get outside of that, you just almost nothing sometimes. Certain businesses, yes, but when you get into the Gurney Cedar Nursery and stuff like that, you get some great images there. But some parts. Not all of this is still there. I will admit that. Some of these. Anybody? What do they call them now? Sir Charles Apartments?
Yes.
Charles Energy Apartments? Something they call them? I think really need to spend more time walking downtown, obviously. Figure out what it really is. So this part is of course gone. The building structure now is country building. I believe actually the majority of this or some of this is gone. I know I have a photograph of this chunk taken out of the side of this that somebody sent to Chan Gurney sent to somebody and he said, well, this is my bedroom, but it was like there was a wall there. The whole building was exposed. It was a fire or something. And then over here is the part that I understand is still there. And that's the federal offices, Jack Paul trial, the Winter Murder McCook, our acting governor in that part of or in that area. So a lot of stuff has started to happen there. But what's really interesting, people don't really realize when we go all the way back, 1860, 61, 62, like when we really start getting stagecoach presence here in Yankton, they're pulling up to the front of that building. That's the hub of everything. That's where the telegraph office starts, all of that. So this was the center of activity from the very beginning, at the very beginning. Of course, as time goes on, it's changed. But aside from river activity, getting into the weeds and the details of center of activity, but stagecoach would come in on that street. What all is that now? Does that help? I think there's a program in our future, right? Of just then and nows and how much good, bad, or different, how things have changed. Sure. and this one's hard. And it throws you off. It threw us off. And we were stuck at 106 to 108 3rd Street forever because we thought it was Stockwell's Cigar Company. And that was on 3rd Street. And that first 100 block, that's where the manufacturing business was. And they had an awning that said Stockwell Products. So we were like, what? But we couldn't get the city meat market to line up with that. And the whole list of things, like I had never seen that Stockwell building picture have this wooden glass siding. So we looked up Julius's businesses, and he fortunately was always in the same place. So we're like, all right, this is getting somewhere. This must have been someone who was just retail selling Stockwell cigars, and he was advertising it. And this is on Douglas Street.
What year is that?
This, oh gosh, it's not a question I was looking for. Let's see here. 1890s, 1880s maybe. I'm trying to remember when Julius was in business. Okay, so it would be, let's see here, I wrote it down, 327 Douglas. I think there's a building missing there now, but there's the Yankton Monument building, and then there's Stevens Chiropractor, and then there's a whole that has a new building, but was there 3 there? Do you remember that was? There, yeah, okay, so that's where we found it. Because again, we're trying to look at market, we got everybody's market, it's about to find Julius in our database, so we found it. So, it's just fun. I don't know. It takes up a lot of time, but it's a lot of fun, and it's just, history's mysteries, right? And piecing together. And once we figured that out, now it has a place. It goes in our past perfect museum management database under Douglas Avenue. And now when we're trying to figure out, we want to portray a certain time in history on Douglas Avenue, we can go here and now share with people the progression of how things have changed. It's really quite cool.
I got a question, and it's a little bit off, but this was like in the 1890s, you said?
Yeah.
Would they have had refrigeration in that meat market? In other words, did they have electric power?
No, I would anticipate it salted.
Okay, because I was thinking.
Or fresh butcher.
Very fresh. Okay.
Salted, it's really salted, but
Yeah.
you have ice harvesting though. We've been ice harvesting off of the river for years. So you would have that, ice boxes. Yeah, salted or ice boxes. Yeah, they had a great, Vinder's Brothers was well on their way to have a great business harvesting off the river at that point, so, yeah. Right, makes you think, like, how does that go into one thing after another, but. The other questions. I really wasn't sure how long it would take, because I didn't know how much you guys wanted to talk, so.
How many photographs of Genesis do we have? Can you guess?
We have, together, we have over 7,500 photographs in the collection. I would say Genesis takes up a quarter of it. Half of it probably is the Bob Chesky photographs. Bob photographed for the newspaper for a long time, and we got his entire collection of photographs. And so we have boxes and boxes and boxes of every photograph that not only made it in the newspaper, but all of the other ones that didn't make it in the newspaper, which is another great project for someone who wants to come in and sit down with the newspaper and go, yeah, that's the same thing, and then all of a sudden we have a story that goes with it, but unless you have an eidetic memory, I don't think it'd be might be very frustrating to do that.
So like, the pictures you took for weddings and stuff, professionally, you got those too?
Professional wedding.
Like, he took pictures for weddings.
Some, not a lot of those. I mean, yeah, there's some, but mostly it's the ones you did for your newspaper, and then the school photographs, school pictures, teachers' pictures, student pictures, that stuff. That's a huge, that's still, Megan's been working on that with volunteers for 10 years. I mean, Megan's been here 10 years, that amount of time, they've been working on those boxes of Bob's photos. I mean, there's one photo where somebody's car got drove into the side of somebody's house. Well, if I could figure out whose car that is, you can't tell me that it made it in the paper. But there's like 3 or 4 photographs that go with it. So right now they're just sorted out by the Parks and Rec or transportation or whatever subject matter might be in the photo. But they just sit there until we can piece it together and utilize it.
So when you archive by the year, the photographer, or what, type of criteria, how do you archive?
Sure. So we use museum management database called Past Perfect. As artifacts come in, everything, whether it's a 3D object, photograph, paper document, it's all cataloged by the year that it comes in, the number of the session in that year, and then how many objects are in that collection. So there might be a lantern, a photograph, and a book. They all go to different places, but they all have numbers that connect them back to the original gift. So that's what's important to us, is who gave them and what they gave, and then they go to their appropriate places in the museum depending on their temperature and humidity requirements. So photographs have their own room here. I remember when we were doing the renovations and somebody had asked me, they're like, what are you going to do with all these little rooms and all these patient rooms? And I'm like, this is like archive heaven. I have a little room for everything I want to do. And that's what it is. It's sorted out by different mediums of objects. Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of when you think about it. Sometimes like Bob's collection is thousands of photographs. We're still adding to his 7501 set of numbers because that's when we can kind of pinpoint when we got them. So, other questions about, we can go back to John Check too if you want, but what we do.
Back to Louis Jonathan, did he have a son that had a...
Yep, he had a son and a daughter. Yep, and I think Marguerite was quite involved in it as well, but it was his son named Robert. I can't remember who remembers off the top of my head.
Yes.
His son was Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, Robert and I think I'm saying her name right, yeah, Marguerite. She was photographed quite a bit. She was very lovely, young lady, very lovely.
And the son had a photography shop.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, yep, they took it on. Ron did it for a while, and then, yeah, Robert, I don't know how much Marguerite was involved, but yes, they did, yeah. And Robert was an artist as well. I have a piece of art from him too. So he had that artistic vibe. And I have to say too, when you start to look at Jonas's work in photography compared to others, you kind of get that artistic vibe in his photography. Instead of everybody sitting there looking straight at the camera, he's positioning you in different ways. And he's got more interaction between like husband and wife. And it's not just a simple, stand there and look straight ahead kind of, he's turning you, you're holding hands. It's a little more like what we see now in professional photography. You don't see that a lot in everybody else that's really functioning at that time. They're just trying to capture the image, leave art out of it. So I enjoy looking at his stuff. He reminds me sometimes of, remember glamour shots in the 90s? Where you know, the distance, you see that from him, and I think that's really kind of cool. That the way he took photographs, it is fascinating. When we open the new exhibit, so October, I'll be back. We'll be opening a Dakota story exhibit. That's the new exhibit on the first 100 years of Yankton's history. And we just recently were able to set a date for that. And in there will be a point where you can see more about Jonas's work, his art, as well as his equipment. I have tons of his equipment. Thank you, but no thank you to the gifts of equipment that I know will come after this, because people always think we need cameras, but his son gave us a large off to, I think Eastman, eventually became Kodak, right? And you just send off, or you pre-treated glass. You just had to slide them out of the envelope, put them in your camera, do the exposure, and you didn't have to deal with all of that setup part of it. Made it a lot easier. But in the exhibit, we spent just a little bit of time, because there's not a lot of room, but we did talk a little bit about how do you get the big pictures. I should have brought one with me, but the big 20 by 20s, how do you enlarge something at that time? They could. You could do a picture of a picture of a picture. You still needed a camera that could produce a glass plate that big. So we have a collection in the collection, one of his largest cameras, that's 20 by 20, is the glass plate is 20 by 20. The camera is 4 or 5 feet long. It is huge. So we will put an image in, we're going to put it upside down backwards and all that, so that when the kids walk up, they put their head under the hood, and you can see what General Sheckler saw when he was trying to make larger things of things. So you don't think about that part?
Do you have Genesets newer equipment like from 1910, 1920?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me ask you this, as a collector of postcards, how many of those pictures are on postcards?
I don't have a lot, honestly.
Same thing. Because that was a lot of photographers would take your pictures and put on postcards.
I have mostly of his cabinet card stuff, and if there are, but they always say that they're General Sheck on the postcard, or are they just the blanket pre-printed postcard? Because again, I don't know that I would know. If they were taken by him or me, I'm looking at the front row because I know you guys. I have not seen postcards with his. Have you? Yeah. So no, because you bought those pre-printed. So I don't think that I haven't seen any, very many, unless he signed in the corner of them. But yeah, that changed a lot of things for a lot of people when you start taking your own photographs. But we're still talking. First permanent photograph, 1826, less than 100 years. It's in your hands and it's cheap and easy to do. I don't know if it's a long time or if that's a short time, but I think considering how much trial and error went into this process, I think that's a decent assessment. It's just that if you think about it though, think about it guys, we're now 100 years from 1926, right? In the last 100 years. The digital photography, obviously everybody here still remembers when you got your roll of film, and you're like, oh shoot, I thought that was going to be a really great shot. I hate to print that for nothing. and for us as a museum, an archive, I'm terrified of digital age. How many times do you go through your photographs and you're like, oh, that was terrible, I'm just going to keep these 5. I may have taken 30 or 40. It's a good, bad, and ugly to that. Because I do have Bob Wachowski's photographs where he took 30 or 40 of the same something, and most of them are either the same thing or just trash. To now we're clamoring for photographs of certain things because we're just too easy to delete. Yeah, who's going to want this? It's just for my own personal whatever. Same thing with emails. How many organizational major things have happened, businesses and organizations that were done by email? When you're not meeting it anymore, do you print that whole list of emails? No. You delete them. Somebody changes their email address, they're gone. We have conversations about this all the time when we see organizations, when we all get together. These are the things we complain about, is trying to capture in the digital era. So, yeah, think about that. All right, time is up. I have 3 minutes according to my teacher. Last thing I would say along that lines though is, go ahead Larry first.
Do you have a picture of the War House building?
No. I might.
I bet you do.
Okay.
Okay, we're generally.
Ben's Brew, old place, Ben's Brew was upstairs, so. Pick a building maybe that's more of the question. Which one wasn't like one time? That's Yankton's, Deadwood. I was just at the history conference this week and we were talking about, they were really talking about how early Dakota territorial politics. And they were talking about the fist fights and throwing people out windows downtown and then bringing in the military and all that kind of stuff because they couldn't agree as politicians. And so I just had said, we're just like Deadwood, we just put suits on to have our fights. They're wearing leathers and whatever, Yeah, we have enough to give Deadwood a run for their money. Last thought that I have, and a big request of mine to everyone when it comes to photographs is